Hello friends and fellow sunflowers, my name is Lena and welcome back to my channel. Before we can completely understand the events of TAMED-DASHED, we do need to know what came before. Obviously we have two previous comebacks to help with that, but we also got two story-like films in their comeback show as well, which helps fill in the blanks. By the way, while I might reference like the idol industry in this video, please note that this is a fictional storyline, part of their Dark Moon with Enhypen story, and this music video does end with telling us that this is part of the Dark Moon with Enhypen, the Blood Altar, which I've previously mentioned was one of 3 copywritten titles that Hype has like copywritten. The other 2 were something about the surface of the moon and the Grey City. So everything in this video is a reference to this fictional storyline and should not be compared to the real-life relationship between the members at all. However, the story does parallel and connect Enhypen's own experience in the idol industry, like from Island to now, and I'm actually working on a video about this with Hypenating, because this is actually her theory and she's gone quite into depth with it, so I might reference it slightly in this video, but for a more detailed video on like the idol industry and Enhypen's experience and like how it connects to what we're seeing in their storyline, make sure that you subscribe and turn on notifications so that you see that video in the future. Okay, so now that we're clear on that, let's see where Enhypen's story started, what's going on in the music video, and then where it might be going. Because we're only our 3rd album in and we've already got things completely out of order, as per usual.
The invitation came first, inviting them to what we know now as the carnival. The boys, probably believing it would give them some possible immortality and strength or riches they desired, followed it.
This is a clear callback to Island as well.
They were told they could take everything, but they also had to give something in return. It was here that they either decided on their own or were maybe tricked into becoming vampires. It's unclear if this was something they completely understood or not, or what the consequences might be for them. If they should wake from a dreamless sleep, they hope tomorrow will begin like a dream. Then come the events of Give and Taken, parts of Drunk Dazed, and Fever, where they experienced the turning, the crossing of the line from mortality to immortality that they'd previously been walking along. They dove into the red sun and shared some of its light, and all the regrets that came with it. It's unlikely they were totally free at that point. It's hard to say if they were being suppressed, unable to fully develop their fangs, yet unable to return to the life they left behind, or if it was something else. But they had reason to want to run away, to escape. They wanted to take the arrows of fate into their own hands, and ahead they saw 2 choices. Multiple dimensions waited for them. As Intro Whiteout stated, whatever they chose, they had to run. Maybe it has something to do with the wolves that followed them in Outro Cross the Line and at Drunk Dazed, and the idea of both chasing and being chased presented in the second story from their comeback show. So they ran away from that place, and they hid amongst the trees, aware of the 2 options that lay ahead of them. Do they continue as they were, immortal beings with power and riches, or do they live freely back as they once were? It was an impossible decision. Exhausting, agonizing thoughts, trapped between 2 horns. Then, in the events of TAMED-DASHED, which are mentioned in the comeback show, the first sun rose, shining on everything below. The light should have burnt us, but it didn't. Why? Were we gifted with new power? This is shown as the moment that they discover the sun no longer burns them.
This sun is capitalized in the lyrics and the subtitles as well, indicating that it's special, like it's done something to become a proper noun. In fact, the sun in the animation even has a face. Perhaps this is related to the woman that we see in Drunk Dazed, like their sun, you know? Or perhaps it's something we've not yet seen. As the lyrics here tell us, the sun is their compass. And we've seen like the red sun leading them before, in the form of a red light. Of course, this red light also correlates to the blood red moon, but I mean, the moon reflects the light of the sun, so makes sense. However, when it comes to like The idea of going towards the sun, I can't help but think of the myth of Icarus, where he flew up towards the sun and got too close, and his wax wings melted and he fell back to the ground. Kind of a tragedy, which Enhypen is no stranger to for sure. They've previously referenced Phantom of the Opera, which is a very famous tragedy. And of course, even in this song, they're referencing Hamlet with to be or not to be. That is the question. Yet, despite this, Enhypen says they have no choice but to run towards the sun. Regardless of their, internal dilemma and decision-making process, that's where they will ultimately end up. They will be led to the same place. They simply have to choose the lesser of two evils. And I do actually think a choice is made for them, but we'll get to that.
Before them stretched out a line, which they followed to a new world.
As mentioned in Intro Whiteout, this is probably the most fantastic island in the world. In the Hype universe, this is likely Magic Island. It's a mirror, a reflection of their dreams, even. And Enhypen frequently refer to sleeping, closing their eyes, and dreaming in their lyrics. But it's also digital, like a world from a video game. And perhaps futuristic to the boys from an older time. We see flashes of a more modern-looking Desellus Academy, which is probably Latin for Academy from the Sky or Academy from Heaven. De meaning from, and Celis meaning sky or heaven. It's hard to find a direct translation though, so it could be wrong. However, there are other languages that have a very similar word, like ciel for French, for example, also means sky. I can only assume this name was chosen because it's a reference to the island, their freedom in a way. This is a place where dreams become reality. Similarly to the carnival, this world is described as a capsized world, where up is down and down is up, and life is mixed with death. Of course, this is also likely the place that is described in Outro Wormhole, which says, "There might be a place where day and night coexist." This quote is especially important, by the way, so please remember it. Anyways, I do think the reason for the similarities to this and the carnival is because of the idea of time itself. I'm sure you've heard before that time is a circle, and so I think that's what's happening here. They've gone all the way around the circle in a way, and they're experiencing the same events. They're back at the place where they were once turned, where dreams become reality. In terms of actual reality, think of it this way. They were once trainees who went on their show, Island, and fought for that, and now they're artists who are trying to find their way in the music industry. But it is a welcome and warning, because as they first experienced it, it might feel like it's their dream, and they can take anything they want. But there's always a price to pay. TAMED-Dashed has two clear timelines, or dimensions, and there's a lot going on in the music video to highlight this. The logo even for this music video has it mirrored, as in two different dimensions that mirror one another. It's not completely clear if this is two different versions of Enhypen from totally different dimensions, or if it's just the same one Enhypen from different points in their timeline. I think it's possible that it could be either, but regardless, these events are happening concurrently, so they're beside each other. If time is a circle, then they would be on opposite sides of the circle, or you could picture it as running parallel to each other if time isn't a circle. Outro Wormhole suggests that they're at least sort of unfamiliar to each other, or maybe at least one is unfamiliar to the other, either through time or reality. The perfectly square mirror reveals a twisted scene. Twisted, of course, referring to that more upside-down reality. In that dream, I face a completely different me. Again, this could mean one of two things. That they're looking at a future they can't possibly recognize because they haven't done that yet. Or that it's a different version of themselves from a different reality, where perhaps they made a different choice and they're more free. However, there are hints in this music video that the Academy version of them is their future, since they also have vampire abilities, but they don't get burned in the sun. However, we have seen dual realities before, for example in the Let Me In music video. However, in Let Me In, I personally think that there are two different dimensions entirely, and then in this one I feel like they're specifically going through time. Therefore, I think it's better to leave it open-ended for now. There's a probability that each of these could be true for each specific music video, and of course, we could be wrong. entirely. I don't think that it's just like one or the other. I do think there are in fact multiple versions of Enhypen. But for this particular video, I don't think that that is what's going on here. Just know that at the very least, there are definitely some time shenanigans going on here. Time definitely seems to be a favorite story point for the Hive universe. Enhypen is truly no exception. The numerous clocks shown in their comeback performance of Just a Little Bit, to the pocket watch that Niki is holding in his Charybdis photos, to even the broken glass shown in other music videos and in their performance of Give and Taken in the comeback show, which elsewhere in the Hive universe signifies time travel. All of these point to the idea of time being prevalent in the story, and these two dimensions, because of their point in time, are pretty easy to recognize. The first timeline is of course the same as it was in Given Taken, with the more older style clothing and the kind of glitchy film effect style that covers every single shot in this timeline in this music video. Every time we see them here, it is like kind of in the forest after having escaped that institution, and as we see, they do in fact gain the ability to go out in the sun, even though we see them getting burned by it early in the music video. This is the dimension that has like the older brown style ball, and if I were to say that each dimension represented a choice between like Scylla and Charybdis, I would say that this one is more tied with Scylla. They are more trapped. The second dimension has a more modern setting, and it has them both in the school and on the beach. They have control of their powers, as shown by Hisung here, but they don't seem to be burned by the sun at all. In fact, they're singing of summer. This dimension has the newer looking white ball, and again, if each dimension represents one of those two choices, I think that this one would be Charybdis and Odysseus specifically, and there is a reason that I think it is both of them, specifically ending with Odysseus, but we'll get to that. At the end, we see Niki from the more modern dimension bringing out the older ball as if it had somehow swapped dimensions and ended up there. Previously, we actually see this white ball appear briefly being thrown to Sunu, although it never reaches him. So at one point, each of these respective balls were in the other dimension, although one seems to only have been very temporarily. At the end of the music video, the boys on the beach look surprised as to where Niki got the ball, since they seem to have lost the white one in the water. However, while the others might be confused, I think Niki knows exactly when and how this ball came to be. And it has to do with what we see him doing a few times in the music video. At the beginning, we see him reaching out towards the ball, which sits in the sunlight out of his reach, unless he wishes to be burned. And of course, they are highlighting this like sunlight portion of this particular part, like, oh, it's the sun. Because later we see someone getting burned. And we are made to believe that if he came out of the shade at that point, he would also be burned. But there's actually something else going on here that I think is really important. In his other hand, he holds a stick, and with this stick, he seems to be moving it in a circular motion. Later in the music video, we see the more modern version of Niki doing the exact same motion with a stick in the sand. Circles and circles. Now, what do we know about that goes like around and around? Something that we've seen with this comeback. It is one of the choices that is causing their dilemma, of course. The whirlpool, the wormhole, Charybdis, time. I think there was a choice made here, even though several members seemed unaware of it. Remember, the lost white ball lands in the water, which is closely tied to the Charybdis version of the album, and of course the wormhole. And if they are parallel points in time together on that circle again, well, just imagine if someone had, some kind of amount of power, like a vampire, and they created an opening to a wormhole on either side. I mean, something would be able to travel through. All you need is a hole on either side of time, or perhaps a twist in the circle, and suddenly they're connected. The two sides will become one. And of course, that is why I think the Odysseus version has to do with the more modern beach setting as well, because Odysseus is the one who survives these two choices, and them being there is where they must inevitably end up. Remember that quote I asked you to remember? There might be a place where day and night coexist. I think this has something to do with the convergence of the same timelines. If day and night were happening at the same time, would that not give birth to a sun, the first sun that doesn't burn them? If so, then I think that the Academy boys were living in a reality where this has already once happened. And I don't actually know how Niki gained the knowledge to be able to do this, because he just seems to be able to do it. But it's clear that he is the reason that this happened at all. It's not something he's surprised by, since he is the one who comes up with the ball. But I don't think he's the only one who knows he did it. In that older timeline, I do think that Sunu is suspicious of Niki. Note that Sunu was the first to notice that the wounds that he had taken had suddenly healed, or perhaps that's a vampire thing, I don't know. Regardless, he seems curious about it, and he goes out into the sunlight to test a theory. It is here that he sees that white ball coming for him, which again, never arrives. Moments later, the others step out following him, realizing that the sun is not burning him. They lower their umbrellas and have the same response, of course. They can reach out to the sunlight and it's all good. They're not getting burned anymore. But who does Sunu turn to look at? Niki. And he never looks at anyone else. This could give rise to the sort of interesting tension I feel that is building up, and possibly could explain the scene in Drunk Dazed where Sunu in his room kind of sees Niki like teleporting all over the place. Maybe Niki just time travels or like travels through dimensions a lot. Dimensions meaning either the dimension of time or the dimension of space. And this gives rise to so many questions. First of all, is this gonna be a bad thing for, like, tension between Sunu and Niki, or is it a good thing? Like, are they gonna be on the same side? I still think they have opposite opinions. Also, how does Niki know this? Like, I asked that already, but genuinely how? Is he from another dimension already, and that's why he can do it? After all, I have mentioned I do think Niki is quite powerful, and clearly he must be, because... And of course, does this play into why he seems to have such a tight grip on Sungun, who we did see him hypnotize in the Fever music video? I'm interested to see. So, what does this story have in store for Enhypen? Well, certainly as the interlude implies, this chapter is not yet over. There must still be a second act. Of course, I do still anticipate that there's going to be a second music video. There usually is for Enhypen, so that might give us more insight as to what's going on here. Their last comeback had 2 Dark Moon music videos, one of them of course being Drunk Dazed and the other being Fever, so I am very interested to see if they're going to do that again. But regardless, the lyrics of the interlude are fairly telling about where they want to take the story. And this will probably be addressed in their next comeback, not in the next music video. Just putting that out there. I'm assuming if there's another music video, it'll explain more about what they're currently going through. So more of this dilemma, more of this questioning, and possibly more of us seeing people secretly choosing one of the answers in the dilemma. And of course, as usual, I do think that the video that they will release for the interlude, assuming they're doing that, which is usually some sort of like animation mixed with like real images, you know, unifying reality and virtual, will give us a lot more information about what to expect, but like subtly. So in the lyrics it says that they've come to the end of their run without learning anything, so they weren't able to reach a decision in that time. And this is highlighted by the line, "The papers with unanswered questions endlessly written." It's all of the questions and possibilities they had while wondering about their choices. But in the end, as I said, I do think it was actually made for them, as we saw, by Niki, who chose to create a wormhole, aka Charybdis, which interestingly is not the one that Odysseus and his crew chooses in the original myth, as they chose Scylla. In a way though, I think this might have actually melded the 2 choices together, but it is unclear. However, the interlude does sort of subtly suggest that this might have been the choice, although it is framed as a non-decision. Like the waves that ride the rhythm atop the sunset sea, for now, I'll float away. The water, again, was most closely tied to Charybdis. And of course, Odysseus' tale in general, they were literally on a boat, and they seem to be innately aware that this will carry them somewhere and thus make the decision for them. But the question that leaves us off with, of course, is where is that? So what do you think? Where will that be? Is it carrying them to the digital world of Magic Island, that future that we saw in the music video? Is it taking them somewhere else? Let me know what you think in the comments below. As it is, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that this video helped you understand the music video a little bit more and gave you some insight as to where Enhypen are possibly going. If you did like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe with notifications turned on so that you're notified every single time that I post a video. All of my social media is in the description box below, so if you want to reach me, if you have any questions, go ahead and at me there. And of course, I wanted to give a shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for your support. And as it is, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay sunny, my friends. Bye!